morning. My name is Richard Wexler, and this is Caring in America, the podcast for caregivers and care recipients. So, as I do on every episode, who am I and why am I doing this? So, take the clock back about 19 years. I'm minding my own business in the software industry, married later, 2 small children, 11 and 7, and 4 parents in their 80s. And all of a sudden, the phone starts ringing. Summer of '05. We get 4 phone calls that will change our lives. We're the average American couple. We've never talked about having 4 parents in their 80s and having to care for them. The adventure that we jumped on lasted 14 years until the last parent passed away at 96 in 2019. Roll the clock back about 16, 17 years, leave what I'm doing in the software industry, realize I can barely spell the word care, start trying to figure that out as we're on this new journey, start educating people around the country. About a year ago, as I was approaching 70, wanted to keep doing this, wanted to educate more people. How do I do that? Someone said, podcast, young man. Looked into it. We're about a year into our podcast now and going strong. We have a special guest this morning. Her name is Sherri French-Waddell. She epitomizes the excellence in the realm of financial planning, boasting over 15 years of experience serving the Boise Treasure Valley. As a seasoned professional, Sherri has established herself as a trusted advisor, guiding individuals and families towards financial prosperity with precision and dedication. She goes beyond mere number crunching, employing a strategic approach that transforms financial challenges into opportunities for success. She's also a published author, having recently released Don't Wait Until It's Too Late. Love the title. A testament to her commitment to proactive planning and preparation. Her leadership extends beyond her professional endeavors, as evidenced by her role on the board for the Funeral Consumer Alliance of Idaho. Her dedication to empowering others and making a tangible difference underscores her unwavering commitment to the community. Sherri, are you there, ma'am?
I am, Richard. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast today. I'm so excited.
You're very, very welcome. What I'd like to do is start talking about the Funeral Consumers Alliance. What is that? What's the history? Go from there, please.
Okay, yeah. Our journey begins in a tumultuous 1930s, time when the economic hardship and significant changes in funeral practices happened during the Depression. It was then that the concept was memorial, societies began to take shape. These societies were formed as a response to the rising cost of funerals, influenced heavily by the Depression and increasing use of embalming and elaborate caskets. So let's fast forward to today. Those societies have evolved into what we now know as the Funeral Consumers Alliance. And we're a nationwide network of non-sectarian, nonprofit educational organization dedicated to help navigate funeral planning. So there's over 100 of different nonprofits of the Funeral Consumers Alliance all over the country.
Wow, I became familiar with this probably 10 plus years ago in California. Can you talk a little bit about membership? Is there a membership? Are there donations? How does this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So our primary goal is to ensure that everybody's informed and we can support in making funeral arrangements that align with your values and your budget. So we're a volunteer organization of affiliates, and we contract or we conduct also price surveys of the different mortuaries in the area and put that on our website because a lot of times you can't do price comparison. Yes, it's a legal thing that you have to go into a funeral home to get those price lists, but gosh, who wants to deal with that when, you're dealing with death as well? You're dealing with the death in the family.
Oh,
How do you go from funeral home to funeral home figuring out pricing, right? So we do all that for you. It's on our website. Membership is $50 per person for life. That's it.
excuse me, $50. Nothing's $50 for life.
Yep. Here in the Treasure Valley, our organization, you pay $50 and you have all the resources that you can imagine for
Wow.
funeral, to plan your funeral, to look at the cost for funerals. We also do research and outreach and advocacy. We pay attention to what's going on as far as legislation in the state of Idaho and what's going on with the board of morticians as well. So we do all of that work for you for that $50 for
Wow.
life. Yeah, that's what we
Wow.
do.
I mean, it's a subject you know better than I that most people don't want to talk about aging. Most people don't want to talk about care. The thing I talk about all the time. People certainly don't want to talk about end of life and dying. But I think unless I'm missing something, that's what happens at some point. Do you guys provide any discounts for people with the organizations that you work with?
Yeah, we actually contract with two different funeral homes in the area. We contract with Exit Funeral Home in Meridian, and right now for immediate cremation, I do believe it's $1,000. And then we also have Roseno out in Twin Falls, and I am so sorry I don't have the pricing right in front of me for Twin Falls.
That's okay.
But yeah, we do contract with a couple funeral homes to have that low cost funeral. Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic information. If somebody wants to get involved with the Alliance, what should they be doing?
Yeah, they can contact us through our website or they can call me personally. And I do believe you're posting my contact info on your page as well. So you can contact fcai.fortboise.org for more resources, and you can contact us through there.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that is fantastic information. Now I know we want to talk to the second piece we want to talk about here, which is Waddell Enterprises. You know, we talk about, and I've talked about in all these episodes, and I'm about 9 minutes in, and I'm bringing up that four-letter dirty word plan. I know you guys hate it. I didn't do it. My wife and I didn't do it. Trust me, we suffered. Not all of you are going to get four parents. One parent's tough enough. One loved one, grandparent, in-law, whatever it may be, is tough enough. Tough enough. But planning. Let's talk about planning. What are you guys doing at Waddell Enterprises?
Well, we have a few things that we're doing. We get together with young to medium sized families, income wise, and we see what they're doing. And a lot of times we can just reallocate funds to make it better for them. Whether it's moving a 401k, whether it's what they're contributing, maybe they have an emergency fund, maybe they don't, but we usually start there. We really talk about income protection. Let's make sure that if one of you dies, that the house is taken care of and that you have income coming in to take care of that young family. The second thing that we talk about is obviously an emergency fund and making sure that you have that 3 to 6 months income in some kind of money market or savings account. And then the third thing we talk about obviously is investing and also saving for the future. The younger we start obviously saving, the better off we are because of compound interest. I think everybody knows that, but a lot of people just don't do it. And we're able to sit down with families and actually do a strategic plan step by step in how to get there. Now, it's not going to happen overnight because debt doesn't happen overnight, right? It's accumulation. But if we have that plan and people actually stick to it, we see people come out of debt and on the other side of it. So that's what we're doing here at Waddell Enterprises.
So again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you disagree with me, let me know. I talk about a lot around the age of 35 when people start making money, how important it is to plan for everything you're talking about, including care, including end of life, looking at the fact that they have aging parents, aging grandparents, in laws, a very close uncle, a very close aunt, someone they may get involved with having to help offset the cost of care. Am I in the right ballpark in that 35-year-old range? If I'm not, tell me.
No, absolutely. About 35, that's when we see our grandparents passing away, or you see, your great grandparents passing away, right? And that's usually when it starts hitting home, right? That, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be living forever. That's when kind of that wake up call happens like, oh my gosh, what am I
Right.
doing? I've got to start saving, or they have a loved one that's close to them that they have to already, or they already see someone caring for them. So like their parents are now taking care of their parents, and that's when
Right.
we see that is at the age of 35, 36, 37. They might have gone to one or two funerals, but now we're having a funeral every 6 months rather than, once
Wow.
once a year, that kind of thing, to where it's a wake up call. We're not going to be here forever. We're like a melting ice cube, and we do need to plan for the future, and let alone the future, but what's going to happen for your care. Care is so expensive. I mean, $3,000 to $5,000 a month, depending on the facility and the type of care you need. And that's now, that's not including like what's it going to be like when I'm that age in 20 years with inflation? Are we going to be up towards, six, seven, $8,000 a month? Who can afford that? And um, planning for that now will just help with the offset of those costs that are going to be astronomical later on in life.
And folks, as you listen to this, what Sherri's talking about is around the cost here in Idaho. And as
Correct.
I talk about all the time, you're in larger cities, San Francisco, LA, Dallas, Chicago, New York. You're already talking about $6, $7, $8,000 a month for a room at an assisted living. We talk about this a lot from an in-home care perspective. That average hourly rate around the country is about $38 an hour,
Mhm.
over 40 in the large cities. So let's role play a little bit. Let's say I'm 35, I'm married. I then meet with you. What are some of the things, and you probably asked me some questions, and I have parents that are 30 years older than me, so they're in their mid 60s, and then there's grandparents that are pushing 90. What are you talking to me about? What are you asking me and giving me some advice about?
First off, I start with them personally. I ask them about their finances, their debt, debt to income ratio. I'm asking those questions like if they have investments at work, um, what they're doing currently, what they're paying on, what their interest rates are, all of that. So we're diving into their personal stuff first. And then after that, we really look at those three buckets that I was talking about: income protection, and then um, emergency fund, and then future planning. And during future planning, that's when we really start diving in to see, okay, what do you foresee that you're going to need? And then we start talking about their parents, right? And then we dive into their parents a little bit and how we can support them with their parents. Are your parents well prepared? Do they have investments? What's going on there? And then we go even further than that, like if great grandma's here or whatever. But first, we have to start with them, right? The person that's in front of us. That's what we start with first, and then we move down the line.
No, and I very much appreciate that. And a lot of people, including my wife and myself, really hadn't gotten involved talking to the older parents about, okay, mom, dad, something happens. We're talking about this kind of cost. Have you saved that kind of money? Let's change that scenario and role play a little bit. Now I'm the 55-year-old and I
Mhm.
meet with you again with my wife. And let's say I have parents, we have all four parents that are mid 80s or so, about 30 years older. What's that conversation like with the 55-year-old and their spouse or partner?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would start with them first. Obviously, what kind of income's coming in, what kind of debt you have, all that kind of stuff, and then we would talk about the kind of care that you're get or the I hate to say burden, but it is a burden, right? Or it's an extra cost. So then we start with the burden of what you're putting out for your parents. And then we look at, okay, is there any relief that we can help with that? Right? So are there state programs? Are there insurance? Is there insurance? What kind of programs are there out there to help support you? And we go from that aspect as well as taking care of them and their retirement, because they're 55, right? And so now they have their parents that they're taking care of. Do we need to sell the house? Do we need to do a reverse mortgage to get more money coming in so we can offset some of those costs for your parents, but yet let alone take care of you as well, and making sure that you're financially sound for your retirement as well? Because a lot of times in these scenarios, what'll happen is the kids will start taking care of the parents, but then they don't think about themselves and taking care of themselves for retirement as well. Does that make sense?
It's great information, folks, when you're listening. I mean, you think about all the different things Sherri is talking about. There's a lot of aspects and a lot of stuff involved in our life, whether we are the 35-year-olds, the 45-year-olds, the 55-year-olds, or even older. And most of us, if mom, dad, in-laws, a very close aunt, uncle, grandparents come to us and need help, we're going to help. But
Right.
there needs to be that four-letter word plan before we get there, whether you are 35, whether you are 55. And what happens if you're the 80-year-old and maybe you're on your own? So we hope that there was some planning for that 80-year-old before they got there. I want to throw one curve into all this
Uh-huh.
that we really haven't talked about. So now let's say we have the 50-year-old mother and father, and guess what? Their kids are going off to college. And now they have that expense of college. I said they were 50. That was going to be us. They were 50 and they have 80, 85-year-old parents that aren't doing well. I mean, you talk about a major league curveball. Can you talk about that for a second, Sherri?
Yeah. Don't pay for college.
Say that again, ma'am.
I would not pay for my children's college.
I understand. I mean, it's again going back to plan. If that is something that a family wants to do, you got to think about that early. You know, a lot of kids these days are doing trade school, not college. A lot of kids are still going to college, but it's something you got to think about if you are going to help them offset that cost or pay that whole cost. How are you going to do that? And then also understanding that little tiny word care is out there as well. Go ahead, ma'am.
So again, I would sit down with that couple and I would evaluate the situation. You know, can they afford actually to pay for their kids' college? Or are they going to be in detriment because they pay for their kids' college and then they don't have retirement? Or are they going to pay for the kids' college, not have retirement, and care for family? And then what happens to you? So, I mean, there's several different situations there, and every situation is different. And I was kidding when I said don't pay for your kids' college, but I personally would not pay for my kids' college. I would encourage them to get scholarships and financial aid and all those kind of things that they possibly could do on their own before I paid for college. But if I had the money already set aside for them for college, obviously I would definitely do that as well as my retirement and my savings. You want financial health. You don't want to be devastated in one area and not the other. It's all in balancing and looking at the whole picture. You know, we can throw several situations out here, and every situation is going to be different for every single individual family. I think the main thing to come away from this is not to have one area lacking. Like, can we spread it out to where it's not lacking? Do we need to reallocate funds so all of it is taken care of? Or maybe we sacrifice a little bit in one area and move it to another, depending on what the need is at that time. And I know we were kind of joking a little bit about, you know, the kids and college and everything, but really it's truly taking that snapshot and saying, okay, what do I truly need to do? And get together with a financial advisor or planner and look at a plan, because I think a lot of times people are just scared of knowing the outcome. Well, the outcome is going to be worse if you don't sit and make a plan, right?
I totally agree. This is fantastic advice. Folks, think about this as Sherri is talking about in a lot of different buckets. You have different buckets in your life. You're younger, you get through school, you go to college, maybe trade school, whatever it may be. You hopefully start a good job, you start making money. But as we've talked about earlier, loved ones are aging. You're probably not thinking about that, but you need to be. You have 20, 30, 40 years of hopefully making income in your life. You become the 50-year-old, you become the 60-year-old. Have you planned for all these different buckets that Sherri's talking about? Have you put money away for your kids for school? Have you put money away to live on? Have you put money away for that big R word, retirement? Have you put money away for that little tiny C word called care? All these different buckets. And as Sherri is advising, and I've talked about a lot, we can help you find it. You're going to get her contact information. Reach out to someone in the financial world. The sooner, the better, to start understanding how you plan for all these different buckets. Because what do we all want to do? I think we want to enjoy life. And we don't want to go through all these different areas of crisis where we're trying to help kids with school, we're trying to pay for loved ones' care, we're trying just to live. It's difficult. Folks, I've been there. I understand that. So as we get ready to wrap up, Sherri, I want to ask you for contact information again in a second, but what's your best advice to folks?
My best advice would be to plan, because if you don't plan, it costs more money. Think about this. Your loved one dies and you have to pick a funeral home. You end up at a funeral home and now you have to make all these arrangements. And you're emotionally devastated. You don't know what to do. You don't know how much things cost. You just take the word of whoever is there at the funeral home. Now, most of them are great and they work within your budget and they do a great job. I'm not saying that. But if you have, you think grandma would really like this particular casket and that casket's $12,000. Where's that $12,000 coming from?
Wow.
If you all of a sudden, you have a loved one that passed and you don't know whether to bury them or cremate them, how do you know what to do? That's the conversations you have to have. You have a loved one that has a fall and all of a sudden they need long-term care. Where's that money coming from? How are you going to pay for that? Like, as a family, how are you going to deal with that? So those are the things that you need to think about, that a lot of times we can curve it. We can't say that it's perfect in life because nothing's perfect, but we definitely can have an overall picture and start planning for your future. And it doesn't matter how little you have right now. Something's better than nothing, and planning is better than not planning at all. So that's why I wrote my book, Don't Wait Until It's Too Late. That's why I'm part of the Funeral Consumers Alliance. And that's why I'm an advocate, a huge advocate of planning for the future.
Thank you, Sherri. That is great advice, folks. This new term I've kind of coined, buckets of life. There are a lot of different buckets, and it's much easier if you're planning what's going in each bucket than trying to fill it very quickly because you're in crisis. If people want to reach out to you, Sherri, can you give out some contact information?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me at admin@digitalenter, me123.com. You can also reach out via phone, 208-954-7063. And again, that's 208-954-7063. And I'd be happy to talk with you and set you up with a nice financial plan. And I'm so appreciative of coming on to the podcast today and just educating. I think a lot of times people are scared and they run in fear rather than taking the time to really look at what's going on. So I just thank you so much for the opportunity today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Sherri. And as we get ready to wrap up, on every episode, folks, if you want to reach out to me, you're an expert in the field, you have comments for me, questions, whatever it may be, the email for me is eldered2023@gmail.com. Please reach out. I want to thank Sherri again. And as we get ready to close, folks, until we talk again, have yourself an awesome day.